You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WYBC.
WCYTV
Here on the Daily Signal.
Good evening and welcome to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated first on 93 WYBC. It's good to be with you wherever you are joining us this evening because we have got a series of breaking news reports that are coming right out of DC and New York and Florida and Tennessee. Right off the top of the bat, Pam Bondi has announced that the Justice Department will both form a strike force to assess the evidence on Russiagate and the documents surrounding it publicized by the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. From the press release, Bondi also announced that they would begin a full investigation. Quote, today, the Department of Justice announced the formation of a strike force to fully assess the evidence published by DNI Tulsi Gabbard and investigate potential next legal steps which might stem from DNI Gabbard's disclosures. This department takes alleged weaponization of the intelligence community, that's the real charge here, folks, with the utmost seriousness. Upon the formation of the strike force, Attorney General Pam Bondi stated, quote, the Department of Justice is proud to work with my friend Director Gabbard, and we are grateful for her partnership in delivering accountability for the American people. We will investigate these troubling disclosures fully and leave no stone unturned to deliver justice. So, this comes on the heels of one of the larger press conferences today in which two things happen. First of all, the Trump administration appears to have set kind of a little bit of a bait and fishing hook here. So, as you know, earlier this week, Tulsi Gabbard released a massive package of files and emails, communications from the Obama administration showing that at the end of the 2016 presidential election and into the lame duck period for Barack Obama, that the FBI-led Comey, or the Comey-led FBI, and the Brennan-led CIA, and all of the king's horses and all of the king's men under Barack Obama completely tossed out information from the intelligence community suggesting that Russia didn't really have a horse in this race, this presidential election. They just wanted chaos and essentially created a narrative made up of completely fabricated intelligence that Donald Trump had either worked with Russia or benefited from Russian interference in the U.S. elections. And depending on how the media chose to cover this, if you were with the New York Times, they won a Pulitzer for suggesting that Russia directly interfered and intervened on behalf of Donald Trump, and that they had gone so far as to maybe attempt something relating to voting machines, and there was some real sketchy stuff. The rest of the media on the more safe side tried to suggest, well, I mean, Russia was making all of these Facebook accounts that were convincing all of these people to go out and vote for Trump because this was their master plan, because Vladimir Putin really wanted Trump in the White House. And so they ran with this entire shtick. And it appears that Gabbard wanted, perhaps, someone from the Democrat-run media or from the Democrat officials in Congress, or perhaps from Barack Obama or Joe Biden's offices, to get out ahead of their skis and say, well, we really only meant that Russia just wanted Trump to win. So they created a bunch of Facebook posts, and we always said that it was just Russia trying to lean in favor of Donald Trump. Because what Gabbard then delivered today in response to a very milquetoast statement about absurd accusations that the Obama office put out from some spokesman no one's ever heard of before, Gabbard stepped up in front of the American people and basically leveled the boom on a massive chunk of not just media narrative, but statements in Congress under oath that are now utterly, completely baseless and just downright perjurous.
On December 9th, 2016, a National Security Council meeting was called to gather President Obama's senior national security officials, which included CIA Director Brennan, then Obama DNI James Clapper, Susan Rice, and others. Following that secret meeting, DNI Clapper's assistant sent an email to the intelligence community with the subject line, POTUS tasking on Russia election meddling, tasking ODNI leaders to create a new assessment per the president's request. The House Intelligence Committee Oversight Report that we released today reveals that, quote, unlike routine intelligence community analysis, the intelligence community assessment was a high-profile product ordered by the president.
Now, this fits in line with the earlier CIA report that was released about John Brennan's CIA during the Obama administration, where Brennan and Comey were so obsessed with creating a narrative that they tossed aside particular statements from the intelligence community to, instead of going with what was presented at this daily presidential intelligence briefing on December 9th, that meeting was canceled, its results thrown completely out of the books, and instead this different narrative was created. And a couple of pundits on the right have played it very safe, and I understand that some of my colleagues have played it very safe and said, well, I don't really know if I see the smoking gun here. Where is the treason? Because Trump came out in front of the American people yesterday and suggested that the Obama administration engaged in treason against the American people. Now, Trump appears to have been using a kind of treasonous overarching term for acts against the United States government, which isn't the legal definition of treason, but essentially is the term that encompasses the obstruction of justice against the will of the American people, violating the Espionage Act of 1917, and sedition. Sedition really is what appears to be the legal crime that's a lot more likely in this particular situation. And then Gabbard starts bringing forth the actual chunks of evidence that shows what it is specifically that FBI Director Comey and CIA Director Brennan chose to lie about, not just for the rest of the Obama administration, perhaps under his direction as the commander-in-chief, but then under the years of the first Trump administration and, again, possible perjury-laden testimony before Congress.
President Obama. It directed senior intelligence community agency heads and created an intelligence community assessment limited to just 5 analysts using one principal drafter. This is not something that occurs in the normal path of producing an intelligence community assessment.
Very, very true. Very, very true. There are no on-record intelligence directives and investigations on an entire nation getting involved in some kind of political scheming against the United States that they just pick 5 random people for and one guy to write it up like it's a group science project in middle school. That does not happen. Again, this coincides with the report on Brennan's CIA from new CIA Director Radcliffe a couple of months ago.
That reflects the views across the intelligence community. The production of this intelligence community assessment was subject to unusual directives directly from the president and senior political appointees, especially the former director of the CIA, John Brennan. The House Intelligence Committee Oversight Report also shows how later that same day, on December 9th, Brennan ordered the publication of quote-unquote substandard reporting on Russian activities, which had previously been withheld from publication of prior assessments because the information was judged, quote, to have not met long-standing publication standards. Some of the information later used in the Obama-ordered assessment over the objections of veteran CIA officers was, quote unquote, unclear or from unknown sources. The Intelligence Committee's oversight report reveals that CIA Director Brennan overruled senior CIA officers who challenged the Obama-ordered intelligence assessment, stating, quote, we don't have direct information that Putin wanted to get Trump elected.
Now we get to the bombshell stuff. You have been told over the last 4 years that even if Russia didn't, directly, stick some USB sticks into some voting machines and they didn't get in there and cause direct chaos and say, stop right there, comrade, you're not going to vote today, are you? Because apparently they're all the count from Sesame Street. They really just created a bunch of Facebook pages to go all in for Trump because Putin desperately wanted Donald Trump to be the president of the United States. This is what was testified before Congress. This is the entire point of the Steele Dossier, which is now publicly knowledge, openly funded and falsified with direct oversight by the Hillary Clinton campaign, who at the time was the Secretary of State in the Obama administration. And, this is just the best part here. It turns out that's all crap. That is all fundamentally false. Every single part of the intelligence report after the initial Obama meeting is completely false. That means when Comey and Brennan went to Trump Tower in early 2017 and told Trump that he was going to be investigated for Russia meddling in the election, they were lying the entire time. They presented false information to the American people, and they presented false information before the United States Congress and its committees. Now, radio crew, we have to let you go off to commercial. If there's ever a night that I've recommended you tune into the live stream, it is this one. So we'll see you guys after the commercial break. We're going to continue because then CNN starts to panic. And this is where stuff really hits the fan. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. Now, as Gabbard was going through a lot of these comments, we start to get to, again, a couple of statements in intelligence documents that are released. Again, this is not just hearsay. This is not even a James O'Keefe sitting there with, some kind of a hidden camera waiting for David Hogg to say, oh yeah, Jill Biden's chief aide was in charge of everything. This isn't even, oh, I was talking to Jan, who talked to Fran, who talked to Peter Gabriel, and he was, playing a set, and he told me that Hillary Clinton invented AIDS. These aren't those kind of stories. These are directly released documents from the United States Intelligence Services that are on file, that have been classified documents in the possession of the NSA, the CIA, the FBI, etc. ad nauseum, that are now being delivered before the American people. And what do we see consistently? Putin never had a clear preference for Trump, despite what would later become Putin developed a clear preference for Trump and aspired to help his chances of victory, according to Comey and Brennan. Again, originally, the email stated from multiple agencies, not just from the United States, but from all across the Five Eyes, who are other nations in the Western Anglosphere that assist in intelligence gathering and sharing with the United States. Nothing suggested that Russia had a preference. Russia wanted one thing and one thing only: complete and utter chaos in the United States and the complete distrust of all of its institutions by its citizens. And my, oh my, did they get that in spades. Now, this brings us to when the CNN crew got a little bit nervous, and so they cut off her audio in the middle of Gabbard's essentially laying out all of the evidences piece by piece. It's a really remarkable moment in journalism.
Multiple intelligence community assessments released in the months leading up to the November 2016 election concluded that Russia had neither the intent nor capability to impact the outcome of the U.S. election. On December 5th.
We've been listening there to the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, continuing on what has now been a multi-day effort, not only with public statements like this, but release of documents, to attempt to back up the quite extreme allegation that President Obama is guilty of treason and that he worked in some sort of conspiracy with Hillary Clinton, etc., in the assessment by the intelligence community.
So the anchor doesn't even know what he's saying. That's not the direct claim that is levied by Tulsi Gabbard. She is being remarkably precise in what she has asserted. And so CNN's going to try to take the one time that Trump said, oh, yeah, I mean, they're all guilty of treason. And now CNN's going to try to play this up. And you see the same thing with Caitlin Collins. She tries to swing in and try to tear all of this down and say, well, Marco Rubio said this one thing, and tries to equate two different kinds of intelligence organizations, two different intel committees, and two different intel reports. And again, neither Carolyn Leavitt nor Tulsi Gabbard take any of it at all. It, again, really remarkable moment. As this was going on, Elizabeth Mitchell, our White House correspondent, was essentially updating me like she was watching UFC and I couldn't afford pay-per-view.
Just on this, Director Gabbard, you referenced the past intelligence reports and assessments on this, including that 2017 one that was signed off, as Ed noted, by every Republican on the Senate Intelligence Community, including the acting chair of the time, now Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who said in a statement that they did not find any evidence of Russian collusion, but they did find, however, is very troubling, and they found irrefutable evidence of Russian meddling. One, are you saying that he's wrong in that statement that he made then? And secondly, what would you say to people who believe that you're only releasing these documents now to improve your standing with the president after he said that your intelligence assessments were wrong?
Okay, so doing two things here. Classic. Number one, you are starting off the leading question. I have set the stage. I have defined the terms. Was Rubio wrong? Again, because Rubio is considered one of the best right now in the Trump administration, in the Trump cabinet. Number two, she then decides to go out on a limb here and suggest that, well, realistically, I mean, what does this even matter? We're going to come back in a second. We have the radio crew on commercial. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast.
is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
So, Caitlin Collins is getting into it with Carolyn Leavitt and with Tulsi Gabbard, and starts off asking a leading question, asks, was Marco Rubio lying when the Senate Intel Committee got together and agreed on some terms about Russia's interference in the 2016 election? And then, number two, are you really just trying to distract from Jeffrey Epstein, which is how CNN covered it across the entire network over the last couple of days, if they mentioned it at all? Again, this will deal with the panic that is now starting to set in with a lot of these outlets. We'll get there. Here was Carolyn Leavitt and Tulsi Gabbard responding.
Just on
Thing that you stated.
prove your standing with the president after he said that your intelligence assessments were wrong.
Well, first, I want to correct something that you stated, which was citing the Senate Intelligence Committee's report as being one and the same. I think you said the intelligence community. The Senate Intelligence Committee has a very different function than the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. The evidence and the intelligence that has been declassified and released is irrefutable. I'm going to let Caroline speak to Secretary Rubio.
I'll speak to both questions. First, on Secretary Rubio, he put out a statement in 2020 following that Senate Intelligence Committee report, and he said what they found is troubling. We found irrefutable evidence of Russian meddling, which the Director of National Intelligence just confirmed for all of you, that Russia was trying to sow distrust and chaos. But what's the outrage in this that Secretary Rubio did not say at the time, the Democrats were saying at the time, is the fact that the intelligence community was concocting this narrative that the president colluded with the Russians, that the president's son was holding secret meetings with the Russians, all of these lies that were never true.
Now, here is a very, very case in point issue that the media are going to have with this. We have the receipts. We have the New York Times articles in which they directly asserted that Russia intervened on behalf of the Trump campaign to win in 2016. We have all of that. We have the Senate Democrats, the House Democrats going on the record saying such. We have the statements from Comey. We have the statements from Brennan before Congress that have asserted things that not only were not suggested by initial intelligence reports, but that were completely fabricated by the Obama administration. And so there is one particular pundit that I'm quite friendly with over on the left side of the aisle, who asked essentially today, so what's the crime? Why is this actually such a big deal? Okay. It is illegal for any citizen of the United States to knowingly provide false information to waste the resources of the federal, state, or local government. Now, the laws differ from the state and localities, i.e. you might get slapped with a different charge for calling 911 and asking them to dispatch police officers to a different location. The charges do, in fact, depend. It is a felony if you do that with federal law enforcement. It is a felony if you knowingly provide false information, especially via a signed affidavit or a signed order, to an intelligence agency, to a law enforcement agency, and to Congress. If you put your signature on it and say, I swear to the best of my knowledge that this is true, and then you put forward information, again, that you saw in front of you was false, and instead you ignored that and chased a narrative anyway, you have effectively, not only violated a series of charges relating to the obstruction of justice. If it involves intelligence data, you've also violated the Espionage Act of 1917. And if you do so in a manner that attempts to subvert the acting federal government, then that is also, again, under the Constitution and current federal law and all legal precedent, that's sedition. That is sedition. All of those things are considered treasonous acts, because it is acting against the wishes of the United States government. Now, the legal definition of treason, this may not particularly be, because treason necessarily involves acting on behalf of another government or in favor of another government or another entity entirely against the United States. But as far as sedition, colloquially used with treason in this particular case, this absolutely fits the bill for. And those that are saying that this is some kind of a deflection from it, I will remind you that multiple things can in fact be going on at the same time. And from what we have based on openly available federal records, Gabbard's offices and the entire National Intelligence Agency's communities in general have been working on this particular situation for months before, by the way, Attorney General Pam Bondi went before the American people in February and said, oh, hey, by the way, we're going to release the Epstein files. So the Trump administration has in fact been working on this particular intelligence community situation regarding perjury from Brennan, which we're going to get to in a second, and the entire absolute dumpster fire of President Obama and James Comey working in a manufacturing of intelligence data to then subvert the United States government in power following Obama, working to, again, completely hamstring and cause a series of obstruction of justice problems, a very serious impediment to federal operation charges, things like that. Those are undeniable. They are undeniable because we have the emails. We have the documents. And for those who suggest that it's Russian misinformation, well, Tulsi Gabbard walked out and then gave the American people some of the Russian intelligence that the CIA, the NSA, and the FBI knew that Moscow was thinking. And so essentially, to prove this to the American people, to show the American people what the Obama administration has done, Gabbard has essentially cleared certain data for declassification that now makes it a lot more difficult to use those same bridges to keep an ear or an eye on Moscow in the future. Meaning that Tulsi said it is more important that the American people know what Russia thought during the 2016 election than it is that maybe we know what Russia is thinking about an election in 2032, for instance. Now, what is the stuff that Tulsi released? Well, here's where we get to the really wild stuff. Apparently, the emails that were leaked from the DNC or hacked from the DNC to the Russian government, to the Kremlin, show that the Russians had a lot of dirt on Hillary Clinton. A lot of dirt on Hillary Clinton. Here's here's Director Gabbard on this particular bit of damning stuff.
Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign. There were high-level DNC emails that detailed evidence of Hillary's, quote, psycho-emotional problems, uncontrolled fits of anger, aggression, and cheerfulness, and that then Secretary Clinton was allegedly on a daily regimen of heavy tranquilizers.
Oh my God. That's insane. So for the argument, again, that has been made that Russia was throwing all of its weight behind helping Trump to get elected, you're telling me they didn't leak that to the public? That she was on Quaaludes? Now, a lot of people are really shocked that Hillary Clinton was on some kind of tranquilizers or Quaaludes or anything like that. That's not really the story to me. Because as I've said before, after being around DC a little bit and continuously living outside of that bubble, though I visit it quite often, it is really sad how much of DC is on cocaine, Adderall at the very least, on every kind of drug that you can think of that are rather readily available. So in the case of Hillary Clinton using tranquilizers, or the question I have is how long? I mean, does she actually go back to the Quaalude era? The methaqualone era, to use the proper term instead of the brand name there. The actual documentation that the United States government believed that the Russian Federation had access to is incredible here. And you're telling me that they wanted Trump to win? They didn't release any of this stuff on Hillary? Really? It's the same with the Epstein stuff. You're telling me that the Biden administration knew very full well they could have leaked particular parts, like they've never leaked parts of documents before, that shows that, Trump and Epstein were trafficking children everywhere together to every Trump tower, and just supposedly, Biden didn't touch that while the FBI was raiding Melania's underwear drawer? Really? I don't know, man. Watergate theory keeps me pretty much away from that line of red yarn conspiracy making. That said, we got to send the radio crew over to commercial because the FCC is also breaking news. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. So, you may have heard from a lot of what the media has actually spent the last couple of days covering that Stephen Colbert of The Late Show is getting canned in 10 months. Now, according to CBS documents and individuals speaking off the record, well, it just so happens that Stephen Colbert has cost the network $40 million a year. And I don't just mean they spent $40 million a year on his show. The budget for Stephen Colbert's Late Show is $100 million a year, and he still walked out with a net loss of $40 million. Now, those on the left have tried to come out and say, well, but he was the most successful late night show. I mean, that's fantastic. I mean, that's I mean, that's like going out there and saying, oh, yeah, the most conservative person running in a New York City election. Okay. I mean, that's not really impressive as far as, political standards go. But in this particular instance, Colbert out here, and you're saying like the best WNBA team. Whoa! No way! Still would lose to a high school varsity men's basketball team. Aside from that, though, the assertion that Stephen Colbert has actually been fired 10 months from now as some kind of a censorship maneuver by the Trump administration is hilarious in and of itself. But there is new information coming out of the FCC. So there have been allegations that this potential merger up on the horizon for Paramount and Skydance is that they would promise to do a bunch of really sketchy, terrible, horrible things to the Trump administration. Ooh, they're going to, I don't know what they're going to do. They're going to hire Lara Trump and they're going to make her president of the network. And then they're going to build a Trump tower and then another Trump tower right on top of it, right on CBS headquarters. In fact, they're going to delete the CBS I, and then it's just going to be Trump hair surrounding the CBS dot. That's the move. So you guys want to know what these really sketchy agreements are? Well, according to the FCC, who did in fact provide for us a couple of things here. So this is according to Rob Bluey over on X posting these particular terms. Skydance has suggested to the FCC that what it plans to do in regard to this particular large-scale merger, number one, undertake a comprehensive review of CBS. Now, it makes sense that someone might actually do a comprehensive review of CBS, considering that 60 Minutes, in violation of FCC regulations, edited the Kamala Harris presidential interview to make her sound not stupid, which is quite the undertaking, and it didn't work, but still, it's a violation. One can understand why Skydance might want to review how CBS runs. Number two, ensure that CBS reporting is fair, unbiased, and fact-based. Oh, the horror. Of course, we all know how much Democrats desperately, again, right now, if you go to CNN.com, just a little live experiment here on the show, and you scroll through the front page of the website, you do not even see a specific piece on Tulsi Gabbard until about halfway down the page, and it is framed directly in the light of the Trump Epstein accusations. So as far as the just reporting the straight facts of the news, spare me. So I understand why they'd want that. Number three, recognize the importance of unbiased journalism. Number four, commit to a diverse array of viewpoints. This makes sense, given that the most popular panels on television are, whether they're from News Nation or CNN, or when Fox hosts them, are people who are on both sides of the aisle arguing in real time. Then also featuring viewpoints across the political and ideological spectrum, and just a couple of other details like having an ombudsman for 2 years. It seems as though the classical legacy media approach is no longer paying dividends. And we'll be back in just a second to talk about what that means regarding some other things. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. Don't go anywhere.
The Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
The What a Fool Believes is really the right bumper to come into this with. Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast. Whether you're joining us on the radio, TV, or on the live streams on YouTube, which is my personal favorite because the live chat's always very unhinged, on X or on Rumble, we've got a lot that's happening from the Democrats right now. The last couple of times that the Trump administration has made assertions regarding Obama or Hillary or Joe Biden or any of that kind of stuff, remember the Democrats in Congress, they come out and say, democracy is in trouble and oh, this is terrible and fascism is here yet again. Well, they're really quiet about that right now, which is suspicious, one might say. I'll say at least it's very uncharacteristic for them. Normally you'd have like, Bernie Sanders out there going, I do not know this Donald Trump, what he's out there yelling about, it is ridiculous. Instead, what are the Democrats focusing all of their attention on? Illegal immigration. Again, we are in the middle of an opportunity for the Democrats. They could be out there trying to discredit the Trump situation right now regarding the ODNI reports on the Obama, Comey, and the Brennan scandal by saying, oh, it's all tied to Epstein. They're already losing energy on this, and they're going back to tried and true slave labor and counting migrants for redistricting purposes. You may remember over the last couple of decades, Republicans have made the assertion that Democrats really want illegal immigrants counted in the census so that their congressional districts can be weighted more, so their state populations can be weighted more, and so therefore California will get more electoral votes. Same number of electoral votes you have, that says, hey, you get congressional representation, that many congressmen in that particular state. Well, I don't know if this is perhaps the most, I don't know if this is self-aware, if it's a lack of self-awareness, if it's a Freudian slip. I mean, she's really just going right out and saying it. Representative Yvette Clarke, Democrat from New York, just straight up announced today, yeah, we need more illegal immigrants and migrants so that I can have more people, so that redistricting favors me for elections.
I'm from Brooklyn, New York. We have a diaspora that can absorb a significant number of these migrants. And when I hear colleagues talk about, the doors of the inn being closed, no room in the inn, I'm saying, I need more people in my district just for redistricting purposes. Oh. And those members could.
Really saying the quiet part out loud. Producer Nick?
Did she just try and mention the predicament the Holy Family was in under Jesus' birth to justify?
The real reason that Mary and Joseph...
Why do they quote the Bible so poorly?
The real reason that Mary and Joseph went to Bethlehem, is so that...
Not for a census.
Yeah, I mean, it was so that King Herod could have more representation in the Roman Empire. He was angling for those Roman electoral votes. Yes. Incredible. And by the way, it's not just on the redistricting oopsies that the left has completely goofed. It's also on things like the aid and benefit, which again, you were promised that, there was no aid that was going to illegal immigrants. We didn't have any Medicare or Medicaid funding going to them. I was told very openly, and may I say, quite honestly, from the brilliant wisdom of guys like House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, that, I've never even heard anyone say. In fact, I'll go on the record and say illegals don't get Medicare or Medicaid. Here was Hakeem Jeffries not too long ago.
And under current law, undocumented immigrants are already ineligible for Medicaid, the ACA exchanges, and for SNAP benefits. Not a single undocumented immigrant in this country gets a dime in federal taxpayer dollars for any part of comprehensive Medicaid coverage.
Well, in the United States District Court for the District of Rhode Island, the state of New York, Washington, Rhode Island, Arizona, California, Colorado, Connecticut, D.C., state of Hawaii, Illinois, Maine, Maryland, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Michigan, state of Minnesota, Nevada, New Jersey, New Mexico, Oregon, Vermont, and Wisconsin are suing for Health and Human Services to return all benefits to illegal immigrants. Wow! For something that is totally not happening, pinky promise, that's a pretty big lawsuit. Now, it gets a little bit worse because the lawsuits are flying in a couple of different directions. The Colorado Attorney General Phil Weiser is currently suing a Colorado deputy who was placed on leave for sharing information with ICE that ended up leading to an illegal immigrant's arrest. So Caroline Diaz Goncalves was arrested by ICE shortly after she was pulled over by Deputy Alexander Zwink for a driving violation. Now, I got to be quite honest with you, this won't hold up in court. There is nothing in any state constitution or really in the federal precedent following the Civil War which allows a state to defy working with federal agencies. No, you can't pass a law that says, we forbid any of our sheriffs from talking with the feds. The last time that happened, it was Fort Sumter, and it didn't go over very well. So I don't really see that happening, but they're going to die on this hill. And if they don't die on that hill, they'll be like New York Attorney General Letitia James, who refuses flat out to condemn murder of any kind. Radio crew, we will catch you for this one. Actually, no, we'll stick around for this one. I'll wait a second here. You guys need to hear Letitia James. This is that nuts here. Listen to this.
Voters make a distinction, a lot of them, and the polls show it, between undocumented immigrants without criminal records, people you're talking about, and those who have them, right? Especially in these extreme cases, like we look at in this case in New York City. But to that point,
she's talking about the Border Patrol officer who was shot in the face, by the way.
In this case, why should those voters think that this is something other than the system not working? I mean, if you're talking about waiting for comprehensive immigration reform, I've been in Washington for 20 years, and they've been trying for a long time. It doesn't happen, right? So why, in the case of cities taking a step and states taking a step, is this an example where there could be that coordination instead of waiting decades for Congress to act?
At the outset, I indicated to you that, in fact, New York State and other Democratic states cooperate with ICE when it comes to criminal convictions.
Oh, well, so much for that, given the Colorado lawsuit. Anyway.
But when it comes to innocent individuals who serve as your nanny, who clean your home, individuals who are our neighbors.
I love it. Again, the slave service labor always. Your nanny, the woman who's cleaning your floors, the guy who's mowing your lawn, the cotton pickers in the fields.
I like how she says illegal immigrants with criminal records and those without, as if she didn't preface illegal immigrants.
Yeah, the illegal part. Oh, they're innocent. In fact, they're so innocent they didn't follow U.S. law. Yes.
Individuals who unfortunately are just trying to make ends meet.
You know, not trying to make ends meet enough to stand in line like legal immigrants. Again, like the very legal immigrants who are the most opposed to illegal immigration in this country.
So these individuals had multiple arrests after deportation orders.
And
why are those not opportunities?
And that is why in the state of New York, when it comes to individuals, as you indicated, individuals with criminal convictions, then we cooperate with ICE.
That's a bold-faced lie. That is first of all, again, refusing to condemn any violence against federal law enforcement is disgusting, but Letitia James is in fact disgusting. You know, we know that. But to suggest, oh, well, we work with them on convictions. Tom Homan came out and said very, very forthrightly, right at the beginning of the second Trump administration, share with us those whom you know are illegal immigrants in your state with convictions for violent offenses. Maybe even arrest them. Then we can come in to that place. We'll take those with violent offenses and then we'll leave. That's it. And a lot of these places said, no, we're sanctuary cities. And their little weird Boy Scout troop message on that side and said, no, we're not going to work with you. And then Homan said, fine, well, then we'll come in and we'll get them. And anyone who is with them who is illegal, as is federal law, we will also arrest. Suggesting that ICE is doing this so they can pick up more illegal immigrants. It is currently federal law that if you have someone who is also violating the law, if the cops break in because they assume that there is some kind of violence that is going on in the room, and there is, let's say, they break in and also producer Nick is over there pulling a Hunter Biden, smoking a crack pipe. Yes, they will arrest him too. It is in plain sight. It is during an act of arrest. That is how federal law. What?
Oh, shoot.
Yeah, I know. That is how federal law works. And now I won't be too hard on Letitia James here because she was allegedly stupid enough to commit mortgage fraud. But anywho, radio crew, I do actually have to send you off to commercial break now. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. Oh man, I'm going to try not to get in trouble regarding those rules. Kilmar Abrego Garcia. Remember Maryland man? A guy who is so beloved. Such a wonderful, upstanding man. Again, one of these innocent, illegal immigrants that came into the country and then trafficked people, as the Tennessee Highway Authority found. A man who likely beat his wife multiple times, so much so that she essentially called the police begging for a restraining order. And he beat his wife with his MS-13 tattooed knuckles. Again, wonderful guy. Also, endangered not their child, her child, the child she had with another man. So he's endangering others. Scumbag. Maryland man and father Kilmar. He was, again, sent to El Salvador, and people cried for his return. And also the United States said, look, we know that you have him in El Salvador for capital crimes. We would like to bring him back and charge him for human trafficking, which in Tennessee can, in fact, result in the death penalty. And all I'm saying is a guy who endangers children and beats women, that should definitely be up for consideration.
Agreed.
Aside from human trafficking in and of itself. But now we have Paula Zennis. Paula Zennis of Maryland, Obama appointee, has now stepped in to say, hang on, if this man is here, you can't arrest him and you can't deport him. Don't you dare. She issues this fancy little order. And I got to be honest with you here, even though the Supreme Court has essentially removed 90% of the effectiveness of these kind of nationwide injunctions here, the argument that ICE cannot arrest Kilmar Abrego Garcia upon his release in bail in Tennessee for federal human trafficking charges. She's also ordering a 72-hour pause on any effort to deport him to a third-party country without sufficient notice. And then she also lists due process, which again, due process is not a defined federal statute. It is a term for giving someone what they are due under the current system of law. He's already met with the immigration judges necessary who show the dude did not claim asylum correctly. The State Department also gets to decide if you get to stay here or not. So, and we'll get to that with Mahmoud Khalil maybe a little bit later. But she also orders that essentially the federal government cannot touch him and he needs to be able to come home to Maryland. And no, that's already, since we have been on the air, that's already been paused. So a magistrate judge in Tennessee has now paused the accused MS-13 gang member Kilmar Abrego Garcia's release from criminal custody for 30 days, which I think is kind of a slick move here because, first of all, Maryland has no authority to interfere with Tennessee, nor should it ever. Also, this judge is going to get pimp slapped by the Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit. She's going to get wrecked. But then again, you know, Obama nominating and appointing illiterate judges. This does bring us to the question of where we start to see judicial appointments and the like here in the second Trump administration. And it all comes down to what's going on right now, because the Senate is getting ready to go on recess. And we currently have U.S. attorneys in New Jersey. There are judges. There are lots of appointments that need to move forward. And Senator Ron Johnson is going to join us next. We're going to talk about this because right now, these appointments and a number of other things, this is where the attention is going to shift for at least the next decade. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Situation developing with Alina Habba in New Jersey, the situations regarding Hakeem Jeffries, the ethics violation possibility. There has never been a bigger need for the American people to see confirmations moving through the Senate on the express track. So we're bringing on Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin, friend of the show, to talk a little bit about this, some of the rescissions packages coming down the line. It's a very, very busy time. Thanks for joining us, Senator.
Well, Tony, I hope you're doing well.
As well as a guy in this news cycle, I don't know if either of us are going to get much sleep, but at least maybe we can get a few of these confirmations through. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I really wish the media were honest, not so biased, so they could be really talking about how outrageous the Democrat obstruction is in terms of confirming, members of the administration. Elections matter. I think Republicans generally respect that. I mean, we'll hold up a nomination or two, but frequently at this stage, when you're confirming deputies and assistant secretaries, that type of thing, oftentimes these things go in block or they're approved by unanimous consent. You don't what we call run the clock on all these. Democrats are making us run the clock on every nominee, every confirmation. So, we've got a backlog. Last time I heard something like 136 individuals just waiting to be confirmed. And when you recognize that in order to fill up an administration, to staff them, you need to confirm something like over 1,000 people. Now, I personally think that is way out of control as well. I can see maybe a couple hundred Senate confirmations. Let us do our advice and consent. I think elections do matter. But again, unfortunately, the Democrats are obstructing this, and I don't see any end in sight. We're going to have to break this logjam either by just voting continuously overnight, possibly recess appointments, whatever it takes. I'm willing to do it.
So, I mean, I'm sure that you don't have to tell us that the second assistant secretary to the deputy of the postmaster is probably not something that should require a full 2 weeks worth of debate and then a full Senate vote on. I don't know if that's the deepest, most important view of the American people, that particular position and positions of that level are, again, deserving of that whole running out the clock approach.
Well, it's not 2 weeks. I mean, for circuit judges, I think it's 30 hours. Otherwise, it's a couple hours. But that all takes time. And you can't do them unless you get consent to, all combined. So it's just one at a time. You grind it out. You move, closer on one nominee while you vote confirmation of another. And you just kind of, rinse and repeat. But again, it's a Democrat obstruction. They're going to do everything they can to sabotage the second Trump administration, just like they did everything they could to sabotage the first Trump administration.
Although they do have fewer items in the arsenal. I mean, even Chuck Schumer bragging about the number of judges he had ready to go, even those are starting to be stretched a little bit thin as the Supreme Court rules against most kinds of universal injunctions.
Our democracy is at risk because Donald Trump shows that he wishes to violate the laws in many, many different ways. The good news here is we did put 235 judges, progressive judges not under the control of Trump last year on the bench, and they are ruling against Trump time after time after time.
Now they're throwing every fit from the parliamentarian all the way over to, again, as we've talked about here, these 30-hour rigmaroles stitched one after another. Do you think that we could see, I don't know how we see out of this. Do you maybe vote some through via packages, like a group for a certain agency voted all for at the same time? Can you even do that? What do we see as a way out of this in the future?
No, not without consent. And so I think the easiest way out of this is literally go into recess and have President Trump do recess appointments. Once he's done that, when we come back in, we can just do those confirmations in the normal course of business. But we would get these people in place. They can serve for a year. That would be pretty significant versus leaving these agencies without their political appointees. And the problem with all these departments and agencies, they are by and large populated by liberal bureaucrats. Not all hard partisans, but enough hard partisans to do everything possible to frustrate and sabotage the Trump administration. I mean, we're seeing this across the board. I know Bobby Kennedy, for example, wants radical transparency. We issued a friendly subpoena to get all the information on COVID and our miserable response to it. We were getting dribs and drabs. Bobby finally broke the logjam last week, and we got a massive data dump. So we're sifting through that. Department of Justice. I know that a bunch of liberals just simply couldn't serve under President Trump, so they quit. Others were terminated. So there's a pretty big hole of a couple hundred attorneys that the Department of Justice need those personnel. The problem is because of lawfare, because the Democrats are so vicious, they'll destroy the careers of people who would just, for example, represent President Trump in Wisconsin. Judge Troop is a prime example. They're out to destroy him. And so that's a huge return for other people stepping up the plate to serve this present Department of Justice. So Democrats, radical leftists, it's the same thing. They are relentless. They are vicious. They play politics. It's a blood sport to them because it's all about power. And they will pull out all the stops. They break every precedent. They destroy every norm. And of course, they've got the media that doesn't say a word. I mean, if this were reversed and Democrats and Republicans were engaged in this level of obstruction, we would hear no end to it. There'd be all kinds of pressure for us to stop.
Coming in from commercial breaks with the breaking news sirens, they'd have everyone camped outside of everyone's offices, everyone's residence. It would be insane. But they are focused on something that is definitely more in your wheelhouse, something that you have been hitting time and time again. I remember back when I was in Wisconsin and you and I were talking away from some of the national brand of things, the concerns about illegal immigrants who are not extremely popular, for example, in Hispanic central communities like Delavan in Wisconsin. They are not a fan of the illegal immigrants which had access to Medicare and Medicaid. And through these rescission packages, through the one big beautiful bill and that entire collaborative effort and the compromise and the exchange there, the Republican Party was able to make it a lot more difficult for those who are not citizens of the United States to receive medical aid on the taxpayer dime. And now all of these articles are coming out saying, oh, all of these illegals are undocumented people of whatever. They've lost all of their medical coverage. I was told, you were lectured, for example, by the Milwaukee Sentinel Journal that, well, you know, Senator Johnson, these people aren't even receiving Medicaid and Medicare. You're making it all up. And now they expect us to mourn the loss of it because it was happening anyway.
You're exactly right. Again, it's not a level playing field. It's not a fair fight. But I think the vast majority of Americans do not believe that people that have, gained entry into this country illegally, that they ought to be, sucking down these benefits, costing the federal government, one estimate is about $160 billion a year just to provide benefits for people who have come into this country illegally. Now, unfortunately, the Biden administration, Democrats in Congress, they welcome these people in, and they don't care about the eligibility for these programs. They're more than happy to bankrupt these programs.
Absolutely right. And the bankrupting programs are not going to be on the backs of the illegal immigrants benefiting from those programs. They're going to be on your constituents and those who are in our broadcasting network and range in the Rust Belt who are paying tons of their income taxes right now towards supporting all of these programs. But again, this is stuff that you and I agree on. We know this. The last question that I want to ask you, and I have been asked to ask you this, are you tasting ink through your fingers? And I'm not just asking this as a softball question here. You are essentially tasked as a senator with being up to date on all of these reports you talked about from Secretary Kennedy, from Tulsi Gabbard slinging things over to the House. I know you're catching up on that over on the Senate side as well. There are all of these reports coming in from the years of the bureaucratic corruption and stagnation, prior administrations. I mean this honestly here. How do you find time to read through all of this? How are you staying up on it? And that's, again, less a journalistic question, more as a personal. I feel like I'm reading 24/7 these days. How are you keeping up with this?
Well, through podcasts like this. But, seriously, there's so much information out there. When you've been in, the tip of the spear in some of these investigations, first of all, I really applaud Tulsi Gabbard, what she's doing, providing the documentation that confirms what we either knew or suspected. But one thing I have to admit in terms of the whole Crossfire Hurricane, the Russian collusion hoax, what she's releasing, none of this is really new to me. I mean, I knew the Steele Dossier was, an invention, a political dirty trick, dreamed up by the Hillary Clinton campaign. Hillary Clinton approved it. That there was a meeting in the Obama White House because John Brennan caught wind through his intelligence sources that Hillary Clinton's campaign had cooked up this scheme.
And rather
than deep sick. Yeah, rather than deep six it, they decided to use it. They went with it and put America through political turmoil that has not ended even to this day. And these people, from my standpoint, are criminals. They are bad people. They have interfered in our election and our political process to a far greater extent, orders of magnitude worse than anything China or Russia could ever hope to achieve. These people need to be held accountable.
I don't think I've ever seen a position or a situation in which the director of the FBI and the director of the CIA could genuinely violate the Espionage Act of 1917 and be braggadocious about it in these emails. I've never seen it. You know what it's like to send emails that you know are going to be public record for eternity. You got to be really careful. When I was a teacher, same thing. You're very careful about what you put on public email servers. And they were open about it. I know we're running out of time here. Do you think, just on kind of a hunch, that we're going to see Senate Majority Leader Thune move forward with possibly canceling part of the upcoming recess, or do you think we might move into some of these appointments or recess appointments, or is this still being hashed out among the Senate?
I mean, it's being hashed out. But again, even if we'd stay in session, you got to grind through it. I'm not sure how many of these people we could really get confirmed. Dozens. We've got a backlog of 136. So from my standpoint, I think what President Trump ought to do is actually encourage us to take recess and recess supporting these people. Then he can put these people in position. He doesn't have to wait. Yeah, I think so. This is the time to pull the trigger on recess appointments.
Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin, thanks for taking a couple of minutes to come by and hash some of this stuff out. Appreciate the work you're doing, and good luck getting some rest.
Have a great day.
We'll be back in just a second. Don't go anywhere. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast.
The Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Yeah, there's more. Yeah, that's right. There's more. Representative James Comer of the House Oversight Committee. You've been hearing all day, the House is shutting down votes so that they don't have to vote on it. Like the House is sitting there. And all of the members of the House of Representatives, they all know. And again, the organization who is the worst at keeping secrets on this earth ever is somehow they all know all the files are just right there, and they're going to hold off a vote just so they don't. Representative James Comer has just issued a subpoena to Ghislaine Maxwell for a deposition to occur at a federal correctional institution in Tallahassee on August 11th, 2025. The DOJ is cooperating and will help facilitate the deposition at the prison. Again, the Trump administration has also asked for a couple of different courts to cough up grand jury testimony and things related to that regarding the Epstein case. I've said it before. I will say it one more time. You have not seen the end of this particular case. It is true, and it is a good thing that many, in fact, are very suspicious about the circumstances regarding how this has been carried out. Of course, we've already talked about that at length on the show. But the argument that right now there's like growing, they're covering it up even more. It's so incredible. Even like the Wall Street Journal is now essentially backtracking on certain things and saying, there isn't actually evidence that there's really anything shaky or shenanigan filled going on at the present time. And again, the media is currently in a very weird place to begin with. I wanted to mention this earlier. We didn't quite have the time. The New York Times is really trying to rewrite the entire Russiagate scandal. So, for example, Julian Barnes' original claim of the fundamental charge that the Russiagate scandal and all of its place and, all of its shenaniganry is completely incorrect, because the New York Times openly claimed that Russia's hacking and the election collusion between, Trump and Russia, that was all Trump. They were working together to get Trump elected. Now the New York Times reads, this new material provides some interesting insights into the development of the review of Russian activity by American spy agencies and the debate over their assessment. But none of the new information changes the fundamental view that Russia meddled in the election and that Putin hoped to damage Hillary Clinton, the Democratic nominee. Now, according to the documents today, that's not quite true. And so there's a bit of a hair on fire situation over at the New York Times because, again, the intelligence reports from Obama's CIA and FBI showed that Russia didn't really care. They just wanted chaos. And so suggesting that Russia desperately wanted Trump to, again, sow discord, violate federal law regarding the Espionage Act of 1917, a couple of sedition statutes, there's trouble in the water. NBC News is also currently in a panic stage. So NBC posted yesterday morning, Trump's intelligence chief are conducting a systematic campaign to rewrite the history of the 2016 election, seeking to reverse an 8-year-old assessment that Russia waged an information war to boost Trump's candidacy. Since that, they have been roasted to hell and back, and they deserve every bit of it. Every single bit of it. Because when you get out there as a journalist, you get way over your skis and you try to equate everything out there at once in order to try to pull one over on a political appointment, it will come back to bite you in the butt. The Democrats have found this out with the equation of the feminism and the LGBTQ plus 2IA whatever movements. They found this out relating to the Biden corruption charges. They found this out relating to the Biden cover-up scandal. They found out this regarding the illegal immigration and who's innocent and who isn't, and when it's fine and when it's not fine, and how Americans feel and they don't. And it's not going to get any better. According to Greg Price, good friend of the show, former President Obama's CIA Director John Brennan is in some very hot water. As you will recall, John Brennan testified in 2023 to Congress under oath and denied that the CIA had anything to do at all with the Steele Dossier. The ICA assessment released by DNI Tulsi Gabbard, in other words, the emails from Brennan in 2016 shows that to be a complete lie. From Brennan in 2023, quote, "No, I was not involved in analyzing the dossier at all. I said the first time I actually saw it, it was after the election, and the CIA was not involved at all with the dossier. You can direct that to the FBI and others." That is absolutely unequivocally false. 100% incorrect. And by the way, the statute of limitations on a perjury charge is 5 years. Why does all of this matter? You really should not expect the kind of indictment to be leveled in the boom at President Obama. It might come. It could. But I think that the way the Supreme Court has already ruled, there's going to be some kind of an immunity argument made based on earlier rulings this year that will, again, very, very unlikely to do any substantial damage to Obama other than his legacy, which we all know is what's most precious to him. However, Comey and Brennan are objectively looking at indictments here. And that's what, according to Pam Bondi's own announcements, are likely to come through after this particular review of the data from the Department of Justice. Comey and Brennan can't get up there and claim immunity. The best they're going to do is, well, he told me to do it. And that's not going to fly. It's not going to fly. And I think that, you know, Brennan and Comey are going to try to sell each other out and others. We've seen that before in particular criminal investigations regarding heads of various agencies. As to whether or not this moves in a position that sees, again, incredibly pertinent, powerful, jail time levying things, I have no idea. We'll need to see what the charges are, but are there a host of things to charge Comey with from this data alone? Again, emails, communications, direct intelligence assessments that we have. They were very open about what they were choosing to do, about discarding certain intelligence reports from, again, people who worked in the CIA under the Obama administration that said, this is what we believe about Russia. And Brennan said, no thanks, I'm going to do a create your own story. He broke out his book of Mad Libs, set it on the table and was like, okay, let's see, I'm going to put Trump here where there's a space for a noun. I'm going to put corruption here for a description, and then also Russian collusion for my bonus word. And then he threw that to the House and the Senate Intelligence Committees and said, yeah, this is the original intelligence report. That's a lie. Perjury is, in fact, not a thing you are allowed to do. Nor are you, again, just to recap, send false information to agencies like the FBI and the CIA as evidence towards an investigation. Knowingly doing so is a crime, and if the motive is there, that in fact is sedition, based on the arguments and the statements that were made behind closed doors, based on the hot mic moments, it appears that there was intent to directly obstruct the federal government of the United States just because Trump was the president. That is open sedition. And the particular sentences on that are not light. So that said, there is one other thing that I wanted to mention this evening before we send everyone off to that beautiful, hopefully sleep-filled relaxation. And this would be, again, some of just the most gratifying information. Apparently, I do want to preface this here. The State Department under Marco Rubio is likely to give Mahmoud Khalil, the Colombia pro-Palestine, pro-Hamas guy, the boot. And they're going to give him the boot directly because, again, the State Department gets to decide which foreign nationals belong in the United States or not. And when Mahmoud Khalil was given the opportunity on an interview that he elected to appear on CNN, and he refused to condemn Hamas, but instead decided to make it all about how, well, Hamas is really fighting a war of resistance. He handed the keys to Marco Rubio to give him a firm, steel-toed boot right out of the country.
Just to be clear here, though, do you specifically condemn Hamas, a designated terrorist organization in the United States, not just for their actions on October 7th?
I condemn the killing of all civilians. Full stop. But what I don't want to get into is
I don't want to get into it. Yes.
No, I am very clear with condemning all civilians. I'm very straight in my position in that part. But it's disingenuous to ask about condemning Hamas while Palestinians are the ones being starved now by Israel. It's not.
I mean, currently we actually see quite a lot of footage of people from Hamas shooting Palestinians trying to make it to aid lines, but, all right.
Condemning October 6th, where 260 Palestinians were killed.
Sources do trust me.
By Israel on before October 7. So I hate this selective outrage of condemnation, because this is not, this wouldn't.
You can see she's like, oh, no, please don't do this. Please, no, take the rope. Don't. Quit digging yourself a bigger hole.
Wouldn't lead to a constructive conversation, and this is also like what we want to deal with is the root causes of why that happened.
Yeah, man, what provoked Hamas to attack Israel? That's the real secret. Why did he, maybe her skirt was really short, and the guy couldn't help himself.
And it's in no way anyone can justify
just to be clear, Mahmoud, we did ask about, we've talked at length about your views, of course, on the Palestinians, but it is fair to ask you about whether you condemn Hamas because
it's really incredible. I do give props to CNN here for actually following up. This is what a follow-up question looks like. I asked you this question. You didn't answer it. Answer the question. Now, again, very, very rare to see on CNN, but hopefully, we'll get a response from Mahmoud. Give him the last chance here, Habibi.
Because the Trump administration has claimed that you are a Hamas sympathizer. So it's very important to actually ask that question in this.
Marco Rubio is waiting outside. His eyes are glowing. There is a grin on his face. He is ready to stick you in the nearest trebuchet and launch you into New York Harbor. This is, dude, here you go. Please, you can hear in the voice, like, please, stop it. We've reported so many things to the contrary.
Broad conversation.
Yeah, I simply asked and protested the war in Palestine.
Ah, yes. Are you going to condemn terrorist organizations? It's like, no, I simply condemn all violence everywhere. It's like, dude, do you think that this person should have been, raped and shot? I condemn everything, including pushing people down in street. That's terrible. Just as terrible as oh my dear sweet Lord. Okay. Again, a firm congratulations in advance to the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, for continuing to take out the trash. So we'll be back tomorrow with a lot more. Again, there's a couple of mail time questions that we're going to dig into as well before Friday. Thank you very much for stopping by. Of course, link to the Discord is in the description, as well as a lot of thank yous to those who have recently joined a membership over on the YouTube channel that really helps support us keep things going. A couple of exclusive things that are coming out just for those folks here pretty soon. Nice little bit of first access kind of stuff. With that said, it's been a wonderful show. Thank you guys very much for stopping by. Hopefully you get some rest. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated and first on 93 WIBC. Take care.